Its downside is the distinct possibility of submergence of a large part of its land mass because of global climate change. Just 3 years ago, the Hudhud cyclone caused loss of around 124 lives and extensive damage to this beautiful city, estimated more than rupees 20,000 crores. Global climate change has adversely affected human and animal life and the planet we inhabit. Glaciers have shrunk, ice on mountains and rivers are melting faster, and plant and animal ranges have shifted. Effects that scientists had predicted would result from global climate change are now felt with alarming frequency, with accelerated sea level rise, frequent cyclones, and longer and more intense heat waves. Increased levels of greenhouse gases cause the Earth to warm in response. The planet's average surface temperature has risen by about 1.1 degrees Celsius since the late 19th century, a change driven largely by increased carbon dioxide and other human causes emissions into the atmosphere. Most of the warming has occurred in the past 35 years, with 16 of the 17 warmest years occurring since 2001. 2016 is said to have been the warmest, with 8 of its 12 months as among the hottest on record. Global temperature is predicted to continue to rise in the decades to follow, largely due to greenhouse gases produced by human activity. A temperature rise of 2.5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit is predicted over the next century. Our oceans have absorbed much of this increased heat, with its top 700 meters showing a warming of 0.302 degrees Fahrenheit since 1969. The Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets have decreased in mass. Greenland has lost 150 to 250 cubic kilometers of ice per year, while Antarctica has lost about 152 cubic kilometers of ice from the same period. Glaciers are retreating almost everywhere around the world, including the Alps, Himalayas, Andes, Rockies, Alaska, and Africa. Global sea level rose by about 8 inches in the last century, and its rate in the last 2 decades has nearly doubled. The acidity of the surface ocean waters has increased by about 30%, and the amount of carbon dioxide absorbed by the upper layers of the ocean is said to be increasing by about 2 billion tons per year. Increase in the ocean temperatures potentially makes for a stronger storm and is one of the key ingredients for hurricane formation. Hurricane Harvey dumped record-breaking rains on Texas and Louisiana. Hurricane Irma hit large parts of Cuba and has devastated parts of Florida. The economic cost of these hurricanes are enormous. The cleanup and recovery bills of both Harvey and Irma is expected to cross several $100 billion each. Human alteration of the atmosphere has played a major role in causing more frequent extreme weather events. Rising sea levels and a warmer, wetter atmosphere are combining to intensify flood risks all around the world. While flooding can occur at any level, areas adjacent to watercourses or low-lying ground next to the coast are more prone to such disasters. The Maldives Islands are near 2 meters above sea level. In 2004, a tsunami swallowed 2/3 of its landmass, permanently erasing over 20 of its islands from the map. If the current trend of rising sea levels and noticeable melting of glaciers and icebergs continue, the Maldives will be completely submerged in the next couple of decades. Fiji, Seychelles, Solomon Islands are all under threat of submergence. A major study by the Ocean Department of IIT Madras shows that India is among the 27 countries to be affected by a rise in sea level caused due to melting glaciers. The sea level along the Indian coast has been rising at 1.3 meters per year. The forecast, if the current levels of fossil fuel consumption continues, is that in less than half a century, entire Mumbai, parts of Chennai and Odisha may no longer be seen on the face of the earth. It is projected that by 2050, continuous rise in sea levels would result in displacement of approximately 25% of the Indian population living along India's 7,517 kilometers long coastline. This would also result in an enormous pool of climate refugees. Are we capable of handling a climate refugee crisis of such gigantic proportions? Besides economic costs, would such a huge influx of people not result in cultural and linguistic frictions affecting the delicate social fabric? On the other hand, can we, without a twinge of conscience, close our borders and prevent them from entering our shores, knowing fully well that they have no other place to go, for the lands they occupied earlier no longer exist on the face of the earth? Researchers have warned that while poor nations would pay mostly in bodies, the wealthier and more developed nations would pay more in economic damages. But there will come a time when no amount of weatherproofing can protect Homo sapiens from nature's wrath. While China accounts for 28% of the global carbon emissions, the United States 16%, and the European Union 10%, India accounts for over 4%. India's commitment under the Paris Climate Agreement is that by 2030, at least 40% of the country's electricity will be generated from non-fossil sources. The Paris Agreement, which came into force last year, is an ambitious effort to combat climate change. In the 12-page agreement, the members promised to reduce their carbon output as soon as possible and to do their best to keep global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. This agreement aims to strengthen global response to the threat of climate change, keeping the global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This decision of the United States may well be considered short-sighted by those living in Texas and Florida. While this battle has to be fought collectively by heads of nations the world over, what should we as citizens do? Should we just sit and wait for the inevitable? The solution, say experts, is in scaling down consumption of fossil fuels. But that is easier said than done. Are we, for example, ready to give up our cars and use public transport? Let alone public transport, the efforts of a previous Chief Justice of India to introduce carpooling in order to reduce carbon emissions had very few takers and was a non-starter. Carbon dioxide per year can we do without air conditioners and headlines of the inconvenience caused by the infamous Delhi fog, flight delays, traffic jams? Can anyone tell the middle and upper class residents of Delhi not to use heat and we all go back to the comforts of air conditioners? How can we fuels and not aspire for these comforts in future which we present lifestyle with no cooking gas in the kitchen? How would we manage?